Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto you. You are tuned in to the Sajdah Wendy Muhammad YouTube channel. I'm your host, Sajdah Wendy Muhammad, and we're going to talk today about unplugging from the matrix and how we can really interpret that concept, and how in interpreting that concept and adopting a new lifestyle that unplugs us from that general matrix. We're going to talk about what that is and how we can tap into our spiritual growth, our spiritual development, new thoughts, a new mind, a new way of being. So don't miss it. Tune in. We'll be back. Give me about 4 or 5 minutes. All right. And check out these commercials. Be a friend, tell a friend. And while you're at it, like and subscribe and support via Cash App, Sajdah Enterprises. See you in a few minutes.
O Allah, guide me among those whom Thou hast guided aright, and preserve me among those whom Thou hast preserved, and befriend me among those whom Thou hast befriended. Bless me in whatsoever Thou dost grant me, and deliver me from the evil of what Thou hast judged. Surely Thou judgest, and none can judge against Thee. And he whom Thou befriendest is not disgraced. Blessed art Thou, O Lord, and exalted be Thee above what they set up besides Thee. I bear witness, nothing deserves to be served besides Thee. And I bear witness that Muhammad is Thy servant and apostle. Amen.
I have told you the first part of my life, I was a farmer in Georgia.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Nobody there was looking at me flying and you thought that I would ever be a scientist teaching the world.
Yes, sir.
See, it is time that brings all that.
Assalamu alaikum, family. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How's everyone doing today? Yes, happy Friday to everyone. I wanted to talk today about unplugging from the matrix and how to create change in our life. I was listening to a radio broadcast of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad the other day from 1966. And he was talking about how it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter where you are, you can always make a change. And I've been hearing this term a lot on the internet, unplug from the matrix, unplug from the matrix. And I think in a general sense, a lot of us get what that means, right? We understand, okay, unplug, get off the grid. But do we really understand it? And so many of us get caught up when we hear the Honorable Elijah Muhammad or those of us in the nation and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan talking about separation, right? And there is a physical separation that is an aspect of what we are taught. But then there's the day-to-day, the spiritual separation or unplugging from this world environment. I put a definition up here where I said, what is a matrix? Okay. A matrix, let's start with this simple definition. A matrix is an environment or material in which something develops a surrounding medium or structure. So it's the environment that you come out of or the environment that you maintain in your life. I was blessed to learn at a very, very, very young age from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan that creating your own environment is powerful. I spent the last couple of days tracing the very early childhood steps of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I have a video that I play at the beginning of most shows that I do. It's kind of advertising and announcing the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House Museum. But I really want to show it again right now. And I want you to pay close attention to his words, because what he's describing is the environment or the matrix that he came up out of. And there are so many of our ancestors, it had the nerve to be cold in Atlanta, and I think I caught a little bit of something. We got some elderberry and some ginger. We're going to get rid of that. But anyway, and there's so many of our elders that came through the Great Migration that unplugged from that matrix. And Black people have a history of unplugging from environments and spaces that are not producing the right results for us. When you think about from the abolition of slavery, really up through about Jim Crow, before they talked us into this concept of living permanently in an environment, like they talked us into living in, if we live in the ghetto, it's like we're stuck there. We can't go anywhere else. It's people that live in certain neighborhoods in Chicago that if they just got on the bus and went a few blocks or maybe a couple of miles, they could go to a different grocery store. They'll get on the bus and go downtown and get some Jordans, but they won't go to get some wholesome food or maybe some wholesome groceries for themselves because they're plugged into the matrix. And the matrix that they're plugged into says, get on the bus, get on the plane, go buy some Jordans, go to this party, go to this club, but then come back home and eat processed food, eat stuff out of the can, things that got ingredients on it that you can't even pronounce. And then the matrix says, just hope, okay, that Your health is still in check. You fix up your outside and make sure you still look good, but on the inside, there's a rottenness that the environment or the matrix is designed to produce. And just because we are looking good, if we're not putting good things into our body, if we don't step out of the matrix, then we're just plugged into an environment that is dictated to us. Okay. But Black people have a history. When you see in those Westerns, those Black men and women on stagecoaches going from place to place, they have a tendency to make us think, based on the way the history is told, that once we got in an environment, we stayed there. But Black people were very migrational. They were migrants. They moved around. So in the case of tracing the footsteps of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he was born in Sandersville, Georgia. And then at about 3 years old, his family moved to Arkansas. They were there for a couple of years and then moved to Cordell, Georgia. And then from Cordell, he went to work outside of Macon, Georgia, in a brick factory, and then later on the railroad. And then ultimately, he went through those doors that said colored only. We saw him, got on the train, boarded a train, and went to Detroit where his father was. But there was a matrix down there, down south, that he unplugged from. And the interesting thing for me, as I went on this footsteps tour, there are so many things happening. I'm certain that some that I was unconscious of, some that I'm conscious of. But one of the things I was very conscious of was the matrix that he was plugged into and had to disconnect from. It reminded me of when, I remember when I was getting ready to take a big project in Maryland, and I was going to be moving from Chicago, and it started looking like it was going to be more permanent than not. This is before I moved back here to do the house. And I remember talking to my cousin, and she put me in a mindset, and she said something to me that I always did. But in this particular case, when a little nerves and a little fear came in, I was in my ego. See, a lot of times we unplug, but then when the nerves kick in, the anxiety, the fear, we go into ego and start trying to protect who we think we are. And I was in that space, worried about, what if this doesn't work out? What if that doesn't work out? What if I can't do this? And she said, you know how you always remove yourself? And I say, yeah. She said, remove yourself and think about your grandmother. And she told me that she was drawing strength from my grandmother and the courage that she had as a woman in the 1940s to get on the train alone and go to Nebraska and meet up with some people that she didn't even know. And I remember having conversations with her about it. And I remember asking her when I was little, like, was you scared? Like, so who was up here? And, how did you know that it would work out? And she didn't know. She just knew that she understood instinctively the importance of unplugging from that matrix that she was born into in Louisiana and finding a new environment to be in. This trait that we have, the world, the white man's world, through Jim Crow, through the colonizers' world, they understood that we would up and roll out. And so they started creating environments that psychologically made us think in terms of permanence. We were not like that before. We may have, even during slavery, we may have been stuck in a certain place because we had to be there. But as soon as it was over with, many of us started moving around, settling in different areas, creating Black towns. There were over 100 Black towns throughout the United States of America because people were moving around. And then once they started moving around, they started running from terrorism. And then literally they were victims of terrorism. People burning crosses in their yard, burning down their buildings, burning up their crops, beating them in the middle of the night. I mean, look at the famous story of Emmett Till just as late as 1955. We don't have to go. We could go to George Floyd and all these other, Sonia Massey and all these other things. There's a terrorist impact that we deal with as Black people that affects our central nervous system. And learning to unplug from that is very powerful. So when I think about the lifestyle given to us and taught to us by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and how it allows us to separate and unplug, we're going to talk about some aspects of it. But I want you to take a minute. Look at this video and listen to the words. I know many of you have seen it hundreds of times. But listen to the words and put yourself in the space of him, the way my cousin taught me to do when we were talking about my grandmother. And she said, imagine getting up, you put on your dress. My grandmother was a very attractive woman, so you know you're fine. And you paying this money to get on the train. Train says colored only. You get on the colored only train and you are on the train all the way from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, all the way to Omaha, Nebraska. And you don't know what's on the other side. I see a lot of videos of Black people during the Great Migration, and they end up here in Chicago. Some of them have family members to greet them. Others did not. Some of them went into rooming houses and boarding houses and didn't know how they were going to make it. Some of them was just figuring it out along the way, but they knew how important it was to unplug from that Jim Crow South sharecropping post-slavery environment. Listen to this and put yourself, as he's talking about himself, put yourself in that space and think about the courage that it took to go down that tunnel that said colored only and get on that train. It had to be bad. And we're going to talk about that.
I have told
If I can play the video.
I have told you the first part of my life, I was a farmer in Georgia.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Nobody there was looking at me blind and mute thought that I would ever be a sanctus teacher. Was.
Yes, sir.
See, it is time that brings all that.
Yes, you're correct, Brother Garland. It is detailed there. I want us for a minute to just put ourselves in that space. And one of the things that the actual physical tracing helped me to do was to put some actuality behind what I knew of the early life of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But the distance, you know, if we're in a car and it takes an hour or an hour and a half to drive from here to there, imagine riding a donkey or on a wagon, or maybe you can hitch a ride on a stagecoach. But imagine how long it took to move around. There's no bathrooms along the way. Me personally, I hate road trips. I can't stand to be in the car for a long time, but I endured this because I knew that this was just a snippet of what he and our ancestors had gone through, just to get from one place to another. So to put in your brain, I'm going to unplug from this matrix and I'm going to go to the next town over. In the car, it might just be an hour. How long did it take on a donkey or walking or on a stagecoach or, you know, hitching a ride here and there, riding in the back of a wagon? How long did it take? There wasn't like the bus, right? Where you could go from, we're talking 1919, early 1900s. There was no bus where you could go from Sandersville over to up to Arkansas. or from Arkansas back over to Cordell, or from Cordell, Georgia to Macon. There was no bus. So you're riding, and you're not only are you thinking about and strategizing and praying and hoping for the future and what you're going to encounter when you get there, but you're navigating through a thick web of terrorism. People being hung. We saw the site where he went to school. And then we saw the site where he saw the young man hanging. And that's on your way to school. And so one thing about this devil that we live among, the pattern doesn't change. Most of us don't even let our children walk to school anymore because of the terrorism that occurs from home to school. That's why when you pull up to a school or drive past the school, when it's time for the children to get out, you got the teachers walking the children to the bus. You got the parents all lined up in a long line. Sometimes they got the VIP line and they're lined up to go and pick the children up and let them down off the car. This is to prevent the terrorism that they may face if they have to take the public transportation from your home to school, or if they have to walk. Well, imagine in the early 1900s, you don't have that option. You might have somebody that can walk you to school. You may have other people, other children you walk with. But you got to hurry up and get your butt home because you got to help out in the fields. They're sharecropping, remember? And the other thing that I noticed about the land or the matrix there, and when I say matrix and the matrix environment that he came out of, we got the definition up here of a matrix. It's an environment or a material in which something develops. So something is developing. I'm sorry, I did not turn all this stuff off. Something is developing out of that environment, out of that matrix, out of that material. You're developing people out of there. There are people that are born out of that space. And they had the nerve to have the courage to control their environment. So when they got up north and we started living this metropolitan, this city life, the matrix got even thicker because they started attaching money to the matrix, right? So most of the packing houses was the first industry that offered Black people an hourly wage. Okay. A lot of us came from sharecropping, or people had their own businesses. There was so much terrorism around Black people being entrepreneurs that a lot of people just said, look, I just want to feed my family. I'm not going to fight to be in business for myself. I just want to go somewhere, make money. And when they found out that they could go and spend 8 hours somewhere and get a guaranteed amount of money, a lot of people went for it. And so that became part of the matrix that people were plugging into. And these companies were so crafty that if you plugged into the matrix, they created a lifestyle. You had to dress a certain way, right? You had to act a certain way. You had to conduct yourself a certain way. You bought a house. You bought a car. They even constructed it down to the diet and the food. Much of the fast food, the ready-to-eat meals that came during the war, those MRIs and stuff like that, and MREs, came because, remember, back then, it took you a while to create food. So people would go to work. If they're working 8 hours, they either had to bring food to eat, which was a challenge because obviously there would be no refrigeration, oftentimes at those jobs in those early factory days. Or they had to run home and go eat or buy food from somebody else. So They started to create cafeterias so that you didn't even have to leave the campus. They started to create housing projects so you didn't have to live that far away. You could just pop home and pop back to work. You on lunch break, you just go down to the cafeteria. And then in the cafeteria, they now start serving quick foods. People getting off work late, they want you to have something quick so that you don't have to go home and choke a chicken and defeather it and debone it and cook it, and that's going to take hours. You could get this quick fast food meal. And then they wanted the food to be faster and faster and faster, so they started putting more and more chemicals in it. And so now to the point where when you see something in a can, you better really look at those ingredients before you open it up and dump it out. It even looks a certain way. It looks a certain like mushiness and nastiness because it's being preserved. So when we now fast forward to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam, we started talking about separation. We started talking about a lifestyle that is unplugging us from a matrix. It has to reteach us how to survive, because during those early days after slavery, there were thousands of our people that understood, this down here ain't gonna work. I'm out of here. Or they may tell us that this is what we need to do or this is what we need to eat, but I ain't eating that. And then somehow when we got into the city matrix living life and we got a little money in there and got a little style and we got to go out and party, we start living based on that matrix. And now our body's responding to that. We're smoking. We drinking more, right? Because there was alcohol, there was moonshine back in the day. But we're doing all of these things. There's heroin in the cities. There's drugs. There's massive amounts of fornication. People are going out, going to the club. And people began to structure their entire life around the things that the matrix would offer. Friday night, you got to go out. You got to go to the club. People break their neck to go party and do certain things. And to the point where as we began to age and evolve, we became less and less family oriented, less and less organic, if you will, or authentic in our pursuit of life. It's like, it ain't fun unless it's drinking and partying involved. We gotten to that point. That's how deeply plugged into the matrix we are. It's an environment that is producing a certain type of individual. So now you fast forward, as I was saying earlier, to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and he tells us, separate. Well, a lot of us said, I ain't dealing with that because I ain't going nowhere. We so in love with the matrix. But we didn't realize that he's also telling us to separate by our diet. See, the laws and the rules of Islam is an unplugging from the matrix. And when you unplug from the matrix, it's going to produce a different type of individual. You're going to look differently. You're going to act differently. When you go back and you hear the minister describing the Muslims, the early Muslims that were really sticking to the diet and the lifestyle, they rarely had funerals. People rarely got sick. And nowadays we got to stay on point and stay on top of our health because there's so much poison that is being fed to us on a day-to-day basis. We don't know if they caught us or not. So we got to get checkups. We got to make sure that we're okay. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, unplug from all of that. Not unplug from going to the doctor, y'all. Y'all understand. But unplug from this lifestyle. Separate. He told us to eat one meal a day. If you want to heal yourself and get yourself together, start back on one meal a day. And when you do eat, make sure that you're eating good, clean food. Most of us just rolled out of the holidays, right? I know for me, I know I overate a little bit. I also do know that I spent a significant amount of time on the food that I prepared, ensuring that it was all farm to table. So it took a week to source ingredients, making sure farm to table. If it was macaroni and cheese, I made sure I found some Wisconsin cheese from a farm. All of that makes a difference in the health of the food. I'm following that Muslim program where we got them list of ingredients. Bottom line, even if you ain't got the list of ingredients, if you're looking at the back of something and it's got stuff on there that you can't pronounce, and it's got more than one thing, got 20 list of ingredients, but you think it's just one thing, and say you buying some beans or some chili and you getting it out of a can or a package, look on the back of there, it's got 20 ingredients and it's really only supposed to be beans, then that's a problem. So now you got to learn, and there are classes that we've had in the Nation of Islam that teach us or reteach us how to cook healthy, how to eat to live, how to rest our digestive systems between meals and let your body get to a fasting state. Because in that fasting state, you will release some of your own human growth hormones and some of your own stem cells. So let yourself get to that fasting state. Eat that one meal a day, which is between 4 and 6 p.m. It's going to give you a healthy gut. It's going to give your intestines time to clean out and produce the right bacteria so that you digest properly, so that you have the correct type of bowel movement. A lot of us think that, well, I ain't gonna even go there. That's gross. But anyway, it's unplugging from the matrix, because the matrix tells you get up, eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a few snacks in between. But if you got a cold, if you got anything you're dealing with, any ailment, work on that one meal a day. Work on managing that one meal a day. And yeah, you're going to have times where you get thrown off. You're going to come through the holidays where maybe you may eat some extra times a day because the food is just so good. Get back to yourself. Get back after all of that, and come back to one meal a day. Come back to one meal a day. Why do I say it like that? Because a lot of us live in a fantasy world and we want to pretend like we get really pious and we're like, well, I don't eat this and I don't eat that and I don't do this and I don't do that. But we're cowards, we're sickly, we're negative. He taught us how to roll thoughts over in our mind so that we understand the conversations that we're having with ourselves and what it's doing to our health. See, your thoughts produce cellular, generate things in your cell, in your gut, in your organs. And a scientist can access your organs, and a really good doctor can even smell you and tell you what's going wrong with you. I learned that from my business partner in Maryland. He said, you use your senses, your eyes, your smell, touch. Most of us go to the doctor and the doctor doesn't even touch us. But he talked about being a holistic clinician, and you can tell right away what's going on with a person by just using your senses. So those thoughts in our mind are impacting. And let me tell you something. If you're plugged into the matrix, you are plugged into some aspect of the matrix that you just nurse upon all day long. You don't stop to read a book. You don't stop to have a conversation. There's no love in your life. But there's just you and your insecure thoughts and your negativity and your competition and how angry you are at somebody else because they're doing something that you wish you could do or you didn't do. And all this stuff that we got going on, trust me, that is producing something in your body. That anger is causing a seizing in your body and in your vessels because you're in fight or flight all the time. So when you're plugged into the matrix and you're dealing with the jealousy, because it's constant, you're watching all this television, you're constantly looking at people and what they're doing, and you're comparing yourself and you're feeling insecure. You're so plugged in. Now you're in fight or flight mode. You're angry. When you go into fight or flight mode, you take the blood flow away from your organs and drive it to your muscles. That's fight or flight, so that you could get away, so you can save your life, so you can run, so you can jump. But most of us walk around like that all the time. So you're in fight or flight mode. And so you're always musty because your body is thinking something's about to happen. The blood from your organs is very limited, and it's all going to your muscles. So your muscles are always seizing and tightening and cramping. And then when you eat too much on top of that, go look at this in How to Eat to Live. Now your body can't even properly digest because you're eating so much. You're always in fight or flight. So instead of your liver processing, your kidneys processing, your intestines and your stomach processing properly, it can't do it because it don't have enough blood flow, because what's going on up in here in your brain, all the haterism, all the jealousy, all the anger, all the meanness is going on up here in your brain. Your body's rotting out on the inside because it doesn't have enough blood flow to do what it's supposed to do. So you got to unplug from the matrix. What do you feed your mind that can settle your central nervous system? And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has offered us that, has offered us these things. And we have children now that are growing up who have done nothing but plug into the matrix. They eat fast food, which is rotting out the inside of their body. They eat, and if they don't eat fast food, they're eating packaged and prepackaged food and this processed stuff that's not any nutrients at all. But then they're insecure. They're playing video games. They're plugged into the matrix. They're locked into a keyboard all day. And so their brain is not properly thinking thoughts that's going to even help them to digest properly. So they're diabetic at 25, 30 years old. They're coming into our old office in Maryland with blood clots at 25 and 30 years old. They're autistic because then we introduce these chemicals at a very young age, before their brains can even process. 6 months, they tell us, give them a shot. And we don't know what's in the shot. But we give it to them and we wonder why they're not speaking, they're not talking, they're not. And then on top of that, we're not feeding them good, clean, wholesome food. So they don't even have all the nutrients that are there. That's why that navy bean soup is so powerful, because it's going to help you unplug from the matrix. And let me tell you something. When you start loving yourself and taking care of yourself, for me, cooking for Thanksgiving ain't nothing, because I cook like that for myself all the time. Maybe not that many dishes and not that much food. But if I'm going to eat and meal prep for the week, I'm actually cooking my own farm to table food. And that's what I eat. I can tell the difference in the way I vibe and the way I move. People say, how you do all this stuff? It's because of what I feed my mind and what I feed my gut, what I put in my mouth, because of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So having the courage to unplug from the matrix, it's no different than many of us look at them and say, well, you know what? I don't blame them. I would have came up out of that South too. I wouldn't have been sharecropping. I'd have been right up here in Detroit or Chicago. I would have came too. And then some of us saying, I wouldn't have lived in no hood. I wouldn't have lived in the ghetto. I would have just moved. Well, okay. What are you doing now? How are you unplugging from this metaphysical matrix that this world has put together? Remember, the made man does not create. The made man does what? Just recycles the same process. So it's the same process. Now it's just metaphysical. How are you unplugging? I'm grateful that y'all got up this morning and decided that you were going to listen to me this morning and talk about unplugging from the matrix. But those kind of things are unplugging. What type of educational things do you plug into? You got to be careful about movies and shows that you watch. That's all part of the matrix. All part of the matrix. Many people are making different sexual decisions based on things they see on television. People make fashion choices based on what they see on television. They don't even know if something looks good to them or not. Or the matrix tells you at this age, you should be like this. At that age, you should be like that. At this age, you should be like that. We're so plugged into the timeline of the matrix when we don't have to be. And if you look at the creators of the matrix, they're not plugged into it. You see them on television, they might be 80 years old and they looking young, becoming president, accepting awards in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, still rocking it out, still jamming, living farm to table. What we doing? Going to the doctor, limping around. And I'm not making fun of us. I'm just showing us how the matrix is designed and how it will break you down, break you down from the inside out, which is terrible. It's a slow death because we have nothing here, no life-giving teachings, no life-giving wisdom, no life-giving knowledge that we are putting into our body that will help us unplug from the matrix. And let me tell you, when you adopt these lifestyle changes that we're talking about, no, stop smoking. No, you can't just smoke sometimes. You got to be healthy. Drugs, okay? Loose sex, promiscuity. You know, when you're out here and you're having sex with numerous people and you're touching the spirits and energy of all of these people. And nowadays, this devil's so cold, you ain't even got to have sex with them. All they got to do is put it on a movie. And then you sit there and watch the movie. You watch a bunch of those back to back to back. They done already turned you out. And you don't even realize what's going on in your brain and your subconscious because you can't access it because your gut and your solar plexus is dead. You see, the seat of your intuition is right here under the breast. It's the solar plexus. We talked about that in our series on manifestation. You can't even feel your solar plexus communicating with you because your liver's messed up, your kidneys messed up, your gut's messed up. You can't do it. So we got to change this lifestyle around. And once you get that unhealthy cycle of going, that brain gut exchange that's negative going, it's going to impact you. It's going to change you. Look, just eating one meal a day changes your thoughts. Just getting up in the morning and starting your day off with something positive. You should be praying when you first wake up in the morning. Go into meditation. If you wake up in the middle of the night, you should pray. Okay? Those of us that are on here that are Muslims, we know this. We understand this. You wake up in the middle of the night, you should be praying. How are you accessing that power beyond yourself, outside of yourself, to make sure that you are fulfilling your assignment here on earth? Some of us have been through so much trauma and we've been going through so much all our lives because of our mental health issues and abuse that we've been through and challenges that we've had because of the lifestyle that we live. Some of it's not even our fault because we just fell into it because we grew up like that. And we went from situation to situation, handling it and making choices based upon the toxic matrix or environment that we grew up in or came out of. So we're repeating this cycle and we've been through so much. And if we look up and we 65, 70 years old, we're like, look, I don't care what you got to say. I'm lucky to be here. And so we don't want to hear it. We say, look, it's whatever. We say, I'm good. Okay. You used all that energy to survive. But what can you do now? What can you do of greatness now? Or are you just saying, I'm good, I'm just going to coast on to death? And some people look at ages, and you think about with Black people, our lifespan or our age, our life cycle was very low in the early 1900s. And even with during slavery, slaves lived till like maybe 30, 40 years old, if that. You started to see the older people living during Reconstruction. After slavery, you start seeing these 100-year-old people and all of this kind of stuff. And you saw some of that, but people started to live longer once they had that slave master's boot off of their neck. You saw people living longer, saw people living up into the hundreds. But prior to that, it was very difficult for a Black person to live past a certain age, either because of the terrorism, because of everything you had to go through, just walking from one town to the next or back and forth to work. And there's so many things you could encounter along the way. And so the life expectancy was very low. And then we increased our life expectancy a little bit. And then they designed the matrix and they said, okay, we want they're going to live till 65. When we start living to 65, then they say, okay, we're going to create this thing called Medicare and give them some little health care because we know they're going to be sick because we done messed them up. And if you spend any time in healthcare, you know how sick we are as a people. And so a lot of us then compare ourselves. Well, shoot, I'm 50 and my girlfriend is 50, but she got this healthcare problem or that healthcare problem, or my cousin is going through this or that. Stop comparing yourself to other people. That is not a healthy way that is not an intelligent way to judge your health and how well you're doing. You can't compare yourself to other sick people and go, well, at least I ain't that sick. What are you really saying? And what are you really attracting to yourself when you do that? Your focus needs to be on the behaviors and the mindset that have been given to us that will help us unplug from this nasty matrix. And then look and see what Allah begins to do with you, what ideas, what he gives you. Let me tell you something. You don't know what you're doing in life in your 20s, your 30s, and 40s. You're starting to kind of figure it out a little bit. But by 50, you're like, okay, I think I kind of know who I am. So how is it, as soon as you figure out a little bit about who you are, they make you give up who you are? So now people go into their 60s, they either die in a slow death in their 60s and 70s, or they're killing themselves because then they return into this teenage lifestyle and mindset. But, where's our growth? Where's our evolution? Where's our expansion? And this is not to slam anybody. This is just for us to think. What did you show up on the planet to do? And if you are reaching a certain point in your life, how much of that have you done? And how much can you contribute before you check out of here? Unplug. We got to unplug from the matrix. And if we can, and here's the challenging thing with children, especially with our youth, the teen. We have to teach them to unplug from the matrix or not even plug into it in the first place. But then the challenge is they have to know how to navigate around the matrix so they don't get caught up and can't get back out of the matrix. Interesting, right? But the way to do it is with the lifestyle given to us by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The dietary program is one aspect of it. The behavioral program, those acts of civilization that he teaches us, how we treat one another, wanting for our brother and sister what we want for ourselves. Get out of this colonialized gift exchange mindset when you should be gifting people and loving somebody and be okay with pouring love into somebody without expecting anything in return. Nobody's telling you to go overboard and kill yourself and hurt yourself, but you can love on somebody and releasing that love, releasing all of that is going to also bring it back to you. So now you're creating a flow right here, coming right through your solar plexus, and you're meditating, you're praying. So you're breathing in that beautiful energy that's coming from your solar plexus and your gut, because now it's like an engine that can start back up and get going again because you're not pumping it with so much food. And when you pump it with food, it's not all this chemical-based food that you can smell when you burp, that you can smell when you poop or when you release. You can smell the chemicals that your body is having to release in order to combat what you're putting in it. And sometimes based on your thoughts or your environment, your body may become more sensitive at some points in your life than others. There may be things that you're allergic to, things that you used to be able to eat that you can't eat anymore, because on a spiritual level, you're processing and going through another phase of your life. As you begin to clean up, it's very difficult to reintroduce those chemicals back into your body. And so when we understand that the kitchen is our pharmacy and we understand our anatomy, we understand how to analyze the body. What are we looking at? There are certain signs and symptoms of challenges in the body that you may see in the feet. You may see in the eyes. You may see in different ways and different spaces. Well, you got to be able to recognize that, or go to somebody that's going to help you with that. And so even if you go to the doctor and you get a pill, because sometimes you do need a medication, you shouldn't be addicted to these medications, but sometimes you need a little medication. Sometimes you need intervention. Sometimes your wobble has gotten so wide and you're so far out here in terms of your dis-ease and the out of balance in your body that you need something to add back to it. And you need supplements to keep yourself balanced because of all the thoughts and all the environmental factors that you come across during the course of your life, during the course of the day. So sometimes you need a little medicine. But if you're lucky to have a good doctor that can give you a diagnosis, or that will give you a diagnosis, or I could say that can give you a diagnosis, then go into your spiritual space and be mindful. What things have I been thinking that could have created this? Where's my head? Where's my mindset? What am I feeling like? Why am I feeling? Sometimes you got to just say, why am I feeling lazy? Am I feeling lazy because I need some rest? Am I feeling lazy because my body needs to heal? Am I feeling lazy because I really just need to get up and do something? You should be able to analyze your body and make those determinations. And don't compare yourself to somebody else. And you don't have to justify what you're seeing in your body, but you got to be honest with what you're seeing in your body. Be honest with yourself. You can't, let me tell y'all something. If you surround yourself with highly spiritual people, you can't fake it and you can't lie to them. Now, the challenge when you're around highly spiritual people is that we don't often say anything because we respect who you are and where you are in your life, and we trust that you're going to find your way. We accept where you are in your level of development. One of the things that I always hope is that I can be around other highly spiritual people and receive nourishment and encouragement from their energy, and that in turn, I could offer that to other people. But a lot of times when you don't know what you don't know that you can't fake it and you can't lie to highly spiritual people. It's like going around other electricians and saying that you're an electrician, then they start talking that electrician talk and you can't keep up, or you making up stuff and they looking at you going, she ain't no real electrician. She don't even know what she's talking about. And then sometimes they may not say anything to you. Sometimes you might get lucky and they say, what school did you go to again? Like, you need some training. We got an apprentice program over here. But in a lot of cases, people will just not say anything to you. Now, some people don't say anything because they're kind of letting you find your own way. Because a lot of times when you get in a deviant space, you get really defensive about it. You become like an animal. Somebody say something to you, it's like, you mad. So some people just say, well, you know what? I'm just going to, keep a distance, but be mindful of how I can support. But then some people are at another level than you, and they're looking at you and they're analyzing you, and they won't say anything to you because it's not necessarily out of them trying to help you and support you and finding your own way. It's because they then now too are comparing themselves and judging. So we got to be careful with that as well. All right, let me know in the chat what you all thought about this subject. I pray it helped you. If it helped you in any way, please support the channel. Remember, the matrix is an environment or material in which something develops. It's a surrounding medium or structure. So think about it like soil or the metaphysical environment. What kind of environment is your house? Is it clean? Do you have colors? Do you have things there that motivate you, that make you feel creative? What's the environment like there? What's it feel like? What's your little desk like at work? What's it like? What do people feel like when they come into your atmosphere? You hear the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan say he takes his environment with him wherever he goes. All right, let's see who we got in the chat. I see you, Sister Betty. Happy Friday, ma'am. Trying to scroll down here. Okay. Happy Friday, Mom. Welcome. Good morning, Brother Lamont. He says, Assalamu alaikum. Happy Friday. Good morning and wa alaikum salam to you. Sister Aurelia says, grand rising, peace and blessings to all business owners. Yesterday show on business is warfare was fire. I'm thinking about doing a series on that, Sister Aurelia. I was really inspired by that download. Create your own environment. That's right. Sister Dawn, shout out to Sister Dawn and her family, who was a gracious host for us during the Tracing the Footsteps of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Shout out to Brother Ridgely and Sister Annie. Thank you so much. Thank you. I feel so honored to have my Muslim family that I can plug into when I need to and when I want to. It's really great. It's a great thing. It's a beautiful thing. Let's see. Brother Garland, yes, he said that is detailed in the book An Original Man. You're correct. Sister Aurelia said, teach on tracing the step. Yeah, traveling with the wise man. I'm still processing some of the things that came up. And so I'm just not speaking on that. I could speak on for sure spiritually what I was feeling from the distance and from the travel and from the vision. Also, something that struck me, I'm originally from Nebraska, so I've traveled all over the plains, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana. And, at most times when you're traveling across the plains, you see farms with animals. I think I may have seen 5 cows through that whole stretch. There's still a darkness and a sense of death in the land there. And I think sometimes we forget, and because I deal with a lot of people in preservation and stuff like that, and we are trying to oftentimes make the history be what we want it to be. This is why some people don't make good preservationists, or they're not good historians, because they won't just tell the story. They are doctoring the story and telling the story based on what they want the outcome of the story or the history to be. It's a very colonizer's way of viewing history. And the beautiful thing about Brother Ridgely and his wife is that they don't do that. They just show you the story. And I think that that's beautiful. Even in our families, a lot of times we are massaging the story to support what our ego is saying the story needs to be. And so that's why a lot of times when you're dealing with Black people, you start talking about history, and then they will jump in and repeat stories that have been massaged and manipulated, and that, so it's very difficult. Sometimes I go to these meetings with preservationists, and they're going around the room, and everybody's so busy putting themselves in the story. And there's a time and place for that you lose the actual history itself. But in this particular case, again, like I said, I thought it was interesting that I didn't see a lot of animals. And then also, a lot of times we forget that a lot of these areas that became towns with the roads, and we see the name and we are connected as former slaves to the name. And I think we forget that our last names often changed. So if I was owned by a slave master whose last name was Smith, up until I was 12 years old, I would have been Wendy Smith. And then at 12, if they sold me to the Jackson plantation, then I became Wendy Jackson. And then if they said, okay, at 18, we're going to let her marry this man, and they're going to be in the Payne plantation. So now I'm Wendy Payne. So the names change. We get so attached to the names. Oftentimes, since we're taking the name of the slave master, they would just change up the way the slaves may have spelled it. So maybe the slave master spelled pool with an E, and then the other ones didn't have an E, or vice versa. My family's Thibodeau. So if they don't have the X, that's usually the slave master. If it's the X, it's usually the slaves. There's all kinds of little signs and symbols in that we miss, and we get so attached. Oh, wait, so-and-so's a Smith? Let me ask them if they related to so-and-so. Look, it probably was just one big plantation. That whole town is probably a former plantation. So when you see, Smith Road, Johnson Road, even sometimes, that's why the interesting thing is that with grave sites for Black people back in the day, cemeteries are very segregated. So you can generally find stuff there. But sometimes you had the white people buried on the land or on the property or at the church. And so it's hard to distinguish. So we got to be open to understanding what the history is, and try not to take what we're observing and make it what we want it to be based on our intellectual capacity. So I like to, when I do preservation, I like to let the story talk to me. Just a little tip. Even in renovating the home of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I let the home speak to me, as opposed to me going this, and this. Okay. Brother Lamont says that 1 meal a day will save your life. Ayah Solutions. Walaikum salam. Thank you. Says, Assalamu alaikum and great Friday to all. Peace and love from Sister Monica. Yes, Sister Monica. Walaikum salam. Ben IE Chris TV says, the future is now. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I butchered the name of your television. I don't really know. Filter out the foolishness. Sister Ayana's commenting. Let's see who else. We got something. Thank you, Sister Dawn. Sister Dawn is so sweet. I just love her family. Peace be. She said, praise be to Allah. We appreciate you. We are here to serve. And that, sis, you prove all the time when I talk to you. And I just pray that Allah blesses you with more goodness and more love than you've ever experienced or imagined. It's your belief and your faith. The whole family is very palpable, very, very palpable. I cannot believe Wade and I missed you in Atlanta. Oh, that's okay. Come up here for Savior's Day, or I'll come back down. Okay. I couldn't squeeze everybody in. And we had a beautiful reception on Friday. I want to shout out Akira's Cafe, all the sisters that came through, so many beautiful sisters. I'm not even going to start naming names because I don't want to leave anybody out. You know who you are. You all came, you loved on me. It was amazing. It was really, really beautiful. Lots of love, lots of energy. My central nervous system got a reboost with all of that love. All of you all we're just there sharing. And I was just impressed that how many of you came out to support and welcome me. Who is that? Sister Aurelia said, please, more businesses warfare. She says, Sister Ann Muffin Mix is fire. Okay. Mother Tinetta taught us well. Oh, yeah. ASA, I'm in the bush quietly listening. Oh, this is Regional Sky Girl, says she in the bush. Walaikum salam, sis. All right, y'all. I'm going to go. Tomorrow, we're going to chat some more, and I will work on the series on businesses warfare. I'll focus on that and see what comes to me, and we'll create a little series on that. That's kind of my specialty from a strategic standpoint when I go into my clients. One of the things that I've gotten to the point where I've been sought after is strategy, and globally being able to think and helping people find ways to monetize their situation. So, okay, family, love you all very much. Appreciate you, each and every one of you. And I will see you, inshallah, tomorrow morning. I pray that each and every one of you will find it in your heart to support, because y'all know your sister is just putting this out here. I'm doing it for the love. I'm doing it for all of you all. And I have every bit of faith that that love will return, and we'll be able to sustain ourselves. Some people say you can't live off love, but you can live off the manifestation of love. So Cash App, Sajdah Enterprises, go to support sajdahhouse.com. You can use the QR code to visit our virtual store. And please, please, please join the mailing list, because we will be announcing soon what the upcoming visitation schedule will be. All right. Peace and blessings, family. Love you all.
Number one, we want freedom. We want a full and complete freedom. Number two, we want justice, equal justice under the law of justice. We want justice applied equally to all, regardless of creed or class or color. Third, we want equality of opportunity. We want equal membership in a good society, a society of righteousness, a society of civilized people who believe in peace, who believe and practice peace and kindness.